Marriage/engagement photographers/videographers of Reddit, have you developed a sixth sense for which marriages will flourish and which will not? What are the green and red flags? Was a wedding photographer. I think you can kind of tell if they are going to stay together forever based on how they handle all the little, and sometimes even big, problems a wedding day can bring. There was one couple's story I love to tell. They are not your typical bride and groom. They had their wedding in a forest where you could also go climbing, don't know what they are called, with a big wooden house and fireplace in front. All vegan food and a lot of friends with loads of dogs. Everything was perfect, except the special dress the bride had have made and painted didn't arrive in time for the ceremony and she was devastated. She was in her sweatpants and a Mickey Mouse t-shirt at that time and her soon-to-be husband took off his suit, put on a big white shirt, stood there in his boxer shorts and just said, "Well, we have to go," cause the ceremony person had to leave an hour later, and she just laughed and went with it. I was in shock, but other than it being strange to have hairy man legs in my wedding photos, taking the pictures was really fun and they were totally relaxed. I'm pretty sure they will be doing well. And I have to tell this one too, I didn't need a sixth sense when I heard that on their honeymoon, the bride cheated on the groom, so the groom's parents didn't want the photos or the video I had shot. Instead they wanted me to sue her for the remainder of the money they owed me. I told them I was sorry but they signed the contract so they had to pay. The bride was a total bitch to him all day at the wedding. It was no surprise she did this. He was absolutely heartbroken. And yes, they sent me a check for the remainder, and I still have all the photos, developed and collecting dust in a pile still in the lab bag I brought them home in. This was in 2003, and I can't bring myself to throw them away. The best part? The groom called me 2 years later to do his wedding photos and video because he was getting married again. I was all set to do it, and then the new fiancée pulled the plug. Turns out she didn't want any memories of the first wedding being involved. So I was fired as soon as I was hired. I am a videographer. Most weddings we video are fairly smooth. Couple is happy. Family cries tears of joy. Lots of laughter. That bit. We did film one wedding that seemed fine right up until the aisle walk. We video the bride and groom prep. They have 2 suites, one for the ladies and one for the gentlemen. My partner and I were having an easy time running back and forth. Everyone is drinking. Not light beer either. I mean knocking back shots. Empty bottles everywhere. Offering us rounds too as they go by. Everyone is pretty carefree, upbeat, and ready to party, the bride and groom most of all. This is going to be the easiest wedding we film. Or so we thought. Now everyone is seated in the ceremony hall. Groom and all his men are up front with the officiant. Bridesmaids start walking down the aisle. All beautiful. The bride walks in with her father. At this point I'm filming the groom and his reaction. We get a wide shot because we can always zoom in during post. My partner is recording the groom and her father. I see the best man in my viewfinder pull out a flask from his jacket pocket. The rest of the men do the same except groom. So this is clearly planned. The best man speaks loud enough over the music so people turn to him away from the bride. He raises his glass high and shouts, "Here's to bride name, here's to groom name, may you never disagree. But if you do," he points at the bride with his flask hand and finishes, "You, here's to groom name." They all drink to their frat boy toast. The best man hands the groom his flask and he drinks it laughing. I have never watched a video more than I have the reaction of the bride and her father. Jaw dropped, speechless. The ceremony went on. And it's not done. The officiant asks the bride, "Do you take groom yada yada?" And she surprisingly, yet weakly, says yes. The officiant asks the same of the groom and instead of just saying yes, he screams, "Da yet I do." Bride just face palms herself in embarrassment. The look of disgust on her whole family's face the entire night after that was priceless and highly awkward to film. I could go on with more stories about this wedding, but this just about the bride and groom. Needless to say, I think that's a big red flag. Dr. Best man raises his flask as bride is walking down the aisle and says, "Here's to bride, here's to groom, may you never disagree, but if you do," you pointing at bride, "hey, raise to groom." All groomsmen drink from flasks, including the groom. Some people are asking for the other stories. All at the same wedding, mind you. Most of what we do is really classy, I promise. Whenever I video, I try to get as much as the bride and groom dancing as possible. Usually people make way for the camera as soon as they see it and are really nice. I'm filming this perfect shot of the bride. People are jumping in with her to dance, which is awesome. We want guests interacting like that. This one guy jumps in front of my camera, sticking his tongue out, would not get out of my way. I step, he follows. Ruined the shot. Didn't even get him because he's so close the focus was off. Accidentally caught another older man lasciviously groping a younger girl while dancing. Dressed hiked up and all. About the same time, a group of 2M2F def older than 40s, were dancing while doing the tongue waggling between two fingers gesture. My partner was filming and a lady kept pestering him, "You have to get this shot, who record that, did you get enough of John Smith?" Who is of no importance, just a random guest ruined a couple his good shots with her hands in the camera. And we always get guests saying their well wishes into the camera. Had one group yell that they wished they had a good time tonight with accompanying motions. They weren't referring to the reception. Wedding videographer here. Had a couple fly us out to Iceland for their engagement shoot. Now the first couple of days were fine and everything looked okay, but in Iceland, some lodging options aren't very luxurious. The groom chose to book what was essentially a tiny bunkhouse, the ones meant for those summer camps, and the bride lost it and complained the whole night. Next morning things are pretty tense and our team continues the shoot as planned, even though it is incredibly awkward. Most of our plans fall through because they start arguing. In front of a beautiful, solitary glacier. For 2 hours. Our team can hear them yelling at each other half a mile away because there is literally no one else around for miles. We finish up whatever we could of the last day of the shoot and awkwardly said our goodbyes. Later on I learned that they broke up a month before the wedding. Not a wedding photographer, but my parents' wedding video is a tell-all story. At the cake cutting, my mom had specifically asked my dad not to put cake on her face, which is usually a tradition. Dad did it anyway. Mom smacked him across the face. Dad said this and stormed out of the reception. They had a 20-year rocky marriage of lies and infidelity, and are finally officially divorced. They are much better off now. The cake cutting really seems to be a good rule of thumb for a relationship. I'm genuinely surprised at the number of times face caking has been called a harbinger of divorce in this comment section. To be fair, I never did enjoy seeing it happen, unless the couple had agreed to it beforehand and were having fun. It always seemed like an out-of-the-blue move that ruined the victim's mood, and often their clothes and makeup. Photographer here, to me the biggest sign is the cake cutting. Some people like to smear the cake everywhere as a joke, some people don't. Usually the couple is in sync about this. They know what the other would like and they don't smush cake on the other's face if they wouldn't want that. Sometimes one of them, usually the groom, will force cake all over the other's face and embarrass and upset them. I've seen this happen a handful of times and all of those relationships that I have kept up with have ended in a divorce. At my wedding, my husband knew not to do this. I warned him multiple times before the day not to do this. Guess what he does when we're cutting the cake? Yup, I was furious. We lasted 2 years and he's now my ex-husband. So I can definitely attest to the accuracy of this LOL. I suppose it's just a small thing which displays whether he's empathetic, caring, and respects boundaries. Violating your wishes on that respect shows that he's none of those, because he didn't stop to think about how it would make you feel, which is either because he's clueless about the fact other people have feelings to start with, or just means that he cares about other things, e.g. getting a laugh more than he does about upsetting you. So I would expect these problems to have come up in other areas of the relationship. And I also think little or subtle boundary encroachments like this are extremely telling, because they tell you that a person has poor respect for boundaries in general and will usually push every kind of boundary they can eventually just because it irks them that other people have them.